Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways on which we are recording today. The Wurundjeri, Wairong and Bunurong people of the Eastern and Greater Kulin Nation. We pay our deepest respect to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to all First Nations peoples listening, and we honour their sovereignty was never ceded to begin with. We acknowledge that their enduring and unbroken connection, as well as their contributions, their storytelling, continued fight, deep understanding and commitment and continued care for country, lands, waterways, sky, culture and communities. We stand with them in their ongoing calls for truth-telling, treaty, sovereignty, justice, land rights, and reconciliation. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. There's a building on the corner of Latrobe Street and Swanston Walk that looks like it's actually sinking into the pavement. It's crowned dome by a grand dome. It was once the home of Australia's first museum and built under the watchful eye of the man who judged and sentenced to hang the infamous bushranger Ned Kelly, just up the road at the old Melbourne Gaol. Today, where it's a temple of knowledge, also one of Naarm-Melbourne's most haunted, quirky and misunderstood spaces in the heart of the CBD. Welcome to the State Library of Victoria. So, before we get started, please take a second to like, share and subscribe here on YouTube, as well as follow us over on Podbean and across our socials for more deep dives into Naarm-Melbourne and across South Central Victoria's layered past, present and future. Before we begin, quick heads up. Today's episode contains references to colonial era executions, incarceration and some references to capital punishment, including the hanging of the infamous bushranger Ned Kelly. This might be confronting to some listeners and viewers. So if this is not the right time for you, completely understand. And as always, your well-being comes first. So please do consider either to pause, skip, or check out one of our lighter episodes. Yet, if you do choose to listen to this episode, as always, remember to please listen and watch with care. Welcome to Down the Yarra, the podcast that takes you on a deep dive into the heart and soul of Naarm-Melbourne and South Central Victoria. Whether you're a local or just curious, this podcast is for you. Hey, I'm your host, Andy, and today we're going to be exploring one of the city's most haunted, quirky, and yet misunderstood spaces in the heart of Melbourne, Naarm-Melbourne CBD, as well as right at the northern central edge of the Huddle Grid. Of course, I'm referring to the State Library of Victoria. Now, the story begins back in 1854 when Sir Redmond Barry, the judge, intellectual and unapologetic Victorian gentleman, spearheaded the creation of what would eventually become the State Library of Victoria. Now, Barry himself envisioned a grand civic institution, free, public, and open to all, no exception. At a time when most libraries were private clubs for basically privileged few. But here's the kicker. Barry is also the same man who oversaw and presided trial of and sentencing the death of the infamous bushranger Ned Kelly in 1880. The very man who declared, "May God have mercy on your soul." And yet, just a few weeks later, Barry himself died, which led to the eerie whispers of Ned Kelly's ghost got his eventual revenge in the end. If you ever walked down Swanston Street and thought to yourself, wait, hold on a minute, does the library look like it's dripping down into the ground? Well, you're not imagining it. I promise you. That design choice is no mistake. It's actually deliberate. The forecourt was redesigned in the 1990s, actually symbolising libraries sending into the earth. A metaphor for knowledge buried, unearthed, and rediscovered. To also create a sense of movement and perspective for the busy city streets. It's a subtle architectural wink to the idea that learning changes how we see the world. Before Melbourne Museum found its modern home beside its next door neighbour of the famous Royal Exhibition buildings in Carlton Gardens, the earliest collection was stored right here. From dinosaurs to artefacts, colonial curiosities to stuffed animals, the old library rotunda was part museum, part archive, and part chaotic attic of Victorian ambition. In fact, the library was once the home of Naarm-Melbourne's cultural quarter, housing not just the museum but also the National Gallery of Victoria, until eventually moved out to its own specific homes in Carlton and Southbank, respectively. The library is packed with its own unique and yet weird treasures. There's La Trobe Reading Room, whose six-story dome was once the largest of its kind in the world, designed so natural light could flood down onto the desks below. There's also the chess room, where generations of Melburnians have battled it out silently for decades. And of course, we can't forget there's also the Royer Books collection that holds everything from medieval manuscripts to first Australian comic strips, and even the original journals of the explorers themselves. And beneath it all, there's a labyrinth of tunnels, remnants of the old storage rooms, service corridors, and the archives that whisper with a hum of Melbourne's forgotten past. In 2019, after the massive $88 million redevelopment was completed, the library is now a blend of heritage and modern innovation, complete with digital labs, podcast studios, even creative space and open creative spaces. It's not just a library anymore. Oh no, it's public commons. A cultural hub where artists, students, historians, and even wanderers can all collide. And fittingly, the ghost of Sir Edmund Barry reportedly still lingers here, said to haunt the upper galleries, silently overlooking the empire of knowledge that he helped create back in the early to mid 1850s. So next time you stroll past the dome, or glance up at the sandstone columns, seemingly sinking into the pavement, remember, beneath your feet lays layers of stories, ambition, and ghosts of the city, forever learning who it is. And since we're talking about ghosts here, in the next episode we'll stroll a little way past the library to the old Melbourne Gaol, just up the road, as well as the old police lockups and the old Russell Street watchhouses, just opposite the jail, where justice, punishment, and yet legends all collide here. Thanks for joining me on Down the Yarra. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe here to YouTube. And don't forget to follow over on Podbean and across all our socials for more stories right across Naarm-Melbourne and South Central Victoria. Till next time, as always, I'm your host, Andy. And remember to keep your eyes open, your curiosity sharper than a library card edge. Remember, in Naarm-Melbourne, every street hides a story waiting to be read.